The galaxy had been burning for so long that even the stars seemed to grow tired of watching. Their once bright light dimmed behind the smoke of endless wars. Fleets of alien ships drifted like graveyards between shattered moons. Their hulls cracked and scorched. Their banners long forgotten, empires rose and fell in silence. Their names fading into dust before anyone could remember why they fought. It began as a struggle for resources, or maybe pride, or maybe vengeance. No one truly knew. Anymore, all they knew was that it had never stopped. Every century the Council gathered to plead for peace, and every century someone else broke it. The Drana blamed the Vosin blamed the Aelthari blamed the humans. Though humanity had never fired a single shot, from their blue and green world they watched, they listened, and they stayed away. The other species mocked them, called them cowards, isolationists, dreamers who feared blood. But Earth did not answer. Its skies remained silent, its fleet never moved, yet its silence grew heavier as the centuries passed. Because in that silence was patience, and patience can be more dangerous than rage. The war raged on, swallowing systems whole. Planets reduced to ash, oceans boiled, atmospheres stripped, and still the fleets fought under different flags but for the same meaningless glory. And in the center of this chaos was the Council of Yaltur. A once noble chamber of diplomacy now turned into a place of blame. The oldest races argued endlessly under the shadow of a dying sun. Their words brittle, their pride infinite, until one day the last neutral system fell. Its world cracked in half under the pressure of orbital bombardment. Billions dead in hours, and the war that had devoured galaxies now stood at the edge of everything. Even the Council's own homeworld burned in the sky like a beacon of madness. Transmissions crackled across space. Each message a scream for mercy, and somewhere deep, beyond the chaos, a signal left Earth, simple, cold, and deliberate. Humanity will intervene. At first, no one took it seriously. The council chambers erupted in laughter. The Aelthari delegate hissed through her crystalline jaws. Humans? The traders of soft worlds. While the Drana warlord bared his fangs and roared, they will die before their ships even leave orbit. Even the smaller races chuckled bitterly, believing it was an empty bluff, a desperate attempt to sound important. After all, the humans had never joined any alliance, never taken sides. Their fleets were rumors, their technologies whispered about but never seen. To the rest of the galaxy, Earth was a ghost world, peaceful, primitive, content with hiding behind their atmosphere. But not everyone laughed. A few remembered fragments of human history, old stories about the wars they once fought among themselves. Stories that spoke of cities erased in seconds, of weapons so powerful they reshaped the planet. But those were myths, or so they told themselves, until something strange began to happen in the silence between battles. Deep space sensors started picking up movements. Massive gravitational disturbances near Sol. Energy readings far beyond any known spectrum. And then came the static, long-range communication arrays across the galaxy began to fail, one by one. Entire star networks going dark. As if someone was switching off the galaxy's voice. The admirals blamed solar storms, the scientists said interference. But the truth was simpler. The humans were moving, and when they moved, space itself shifted to make room. 5 hours after that first human transmission, the war changed forever. The fleets of the great empires had gathered above the dead world of Vashkor, where the final battle raged. Millions of ships locked in orbit, lasers and plasma carving the void into ribbons of color. Dreadnoughts shattered like glass. Capital ships colliding in suicidal desperation, every side screaming victory while bleeding out. And in that storm of fire and ruin, a sudden silence fell. It began as a flicker on every radar, a dark spot on the edge of the system. No signal, no ID, just an emptiness moving closer. Then came the readings. Mass shadows so immense they defied measurement, hundreds, maybe thousands of ships emerging from folded space, each one larger than a city. Their hulls black as the void, absorbing light itself. The alien commanders stared at their screens in disbelief. No signatures, no heat, no communication. Someone whispered, "What are they?" And then the first image appeared, grainy but clear enough to freeze every heart in the galaxy. A fleet unlike anything they had seen before, sleek and angular, forged from materials no scanner could identify. Their formation perfect, their silence absolute. And in the center of that formation was a single colossal ship, its hull engraved with one word in bold white letters: Terran Command. Panic rippled across the fleets, transmissions overlapping in chaos. "They can't be real," One captain shouted, "It's a trick!" Another cried. But before anyone could act, the human flagship opened a channel across every frequency, its voice calm, human, and terrifyingly clear. "This war ends now." There was no bravado, no shouting, just quiet certainty, and then, before any alien fleet could even respond, the Terrans fired. But their weapons did not look like weapons. There were no beams, no explosions, just light, blinding, pure white light that lasted less than a heartbeat, and then millions of alien ships were gone, erased so cleanly that even their wreckage disintegrated. The survivors screamed over the comms, begging for readings, for explanations. But there were none. Every known law of physics had been rewritten in a second. Those who survived the first strike watched as their engines shut down one by one, not destroyed, simply deactivated. The Terrans had disabled them, remotely, rewriting their systems mid-battle. The same ships that once ruled the stars now floated helplessly like toys in the dark, and through it all, the Terran fleet remained silent, not a single cheer, not a single flare. They advanced slowly, methodically, every move precise, every action deliberate. The Council fleets tried to regroup, commanding all ships to retreat to hyperspace, but even hyperspace betrayed them. Collapsing under invisible interference, human jamming fields spread through subspace like a virus, sealing off escape, trapping the entire galaxy's armada in one dead system. The realization hit like a hammer. There was no way out. On the bridge of the Drana flagship, the warlord who had laughed at Earth's name now stood trembling, his massive claws digging into the armrest. "How are they doing this?" he roared, but no one answered. His officers stared blankly at their screens as the Terran fleet continued its silent advance, a black tide swallowing the stars. For every alien weapon fired, 100 Terran projectiles responded, invisible to sensors until they struck, each one carrying the force of a collapsing sun. Entire fleets wiped out without warning, and yet, there was no malice in it, no fury, just efficiency. As if the humans weren't fighting enemies but cleaning up a mess. The galaxy had spent 500 years tearing itself apart. And now the quiet race from the blue world was tidying the pieces. On every channel, the same calm human voice repeated, "Cease fire. This is your only warning." But pride is a stubborn disease, and the warlords refused to surrender. They had fought too long, lost too much, to bow to anyone, especially to a species they once mocked. So they kept firing, and humanity kept answering. The first hour passed, and 1/3 of the galaxy's combined fleet was gone. Their remains turned to dust, their signals silent. The second hour began, and fear spread faster than the destruction itself. Not fear of death, fear of understanding. Understanding that the humans had not entered this war to win. They had entered to end it. Completely, no side, no negotiation, no mercy, just an ending. In the council chamber on Yaltur, the delegates screamed at each other. "They are mad. They'll kill us all. Contact them." But every attempt failed. The Terrans ignored all transmissions, until finally, one voice broke through, the council speaker himself, his old voice trembling. "Humans," he pleaded, "what do you want?" For a moment there was only static. Then came the answer, simple and chilling, "Peace." It wasn't a demand. It was a judgment. A statement of what would happen whether they agreed or not. The council fell silent, every member frozen, and far away, above Vashkor, the human fleet completed its second wave, disabling the remaining dreadnoughts and clearing orbital debris. Their ships moved like a single living organism, no chaos, no hesitation, each maneuver perfect, and as the alien fleets drifted powerless, the humans deployed drones the size of cities, spreading out to capture and repair instead of destroy. They began restoring life support systems on crippled ships, beaming medical supplies to enemy vessels. No one understood it. Why would conquerors heal what they had just destroyed? But humanity had not come for conquest. They had come to clean up the galaxy's mistake. The war had gone on long enough, and Earth had decided to be the cure, a cure that didn't ask permission, only results. By the 5th hour, the fires of Vashkor were extinguished, the wrecks cleared, the transmissions restored, and across the galaxy, from the frozen moons of the Vossen Empire to the shattered colonies of the Drana clans, every species watched the same broadcast. A human admiral standing on the bridge of the Terran flagship, his eyes steady, his uniform plain, no medals, no smile. "This war is over," he said, his voice echoing across every frequency. You have spent 5 centuries fighting, killing, destroying, for reasons none of you remember. That ends today. You will disarm, you will rebuild, and you will remember who stopped you. Behind him, through the bridge windows, the stars were calm again, clean, clear, almost beautiful. We are not your enemies, he continued. We are what you could have been if you had chosen peace. Then the broadcast ended, the screens went dark, and the Terran fleet turned away, vanishing into folded space as silently as it had come, leaving behind only the faint hum of power and the memory of their precision. 5 hours. That was all it had taken. The galaxy had fought for 500 years, and humanity had ended it in 5 hours. The Council later tried to explain it, to study it, to understand it. But no one ever did. The technology was beyond comprehension, the tactics unreadable. Even the sensors that had survived recorded data that contradicted reality itself. The scientists debated endlessly, the philosophers wrote essays. But the soldiers who survived never spoke of it again. They all remembered the same thing. The silence, the calm, the eyes of the humans who didn't hate them but pitied them, and the quiet voice that said, peace. The galaxy rebuilt slowly after that. But every new empire, every council, every child born under those quiet stars learned one truth that no one dared test again. When humanity enters the war ends. The galaxy was still trembling from what it had seen. Entire fleets gone, empires broken, the silence that followed more terrifying than the destruction itself. The wreckage of 1,000 warships drifted through the dead skies of Vashkor, glowing faintly from the fires still burning in their cores. Communication networks tried to reconnect, but every signal was weak, scattered, confused. Commanders shouting across broken frequencies, trying to find survivors, trying to understand what had happened, and then, something else appeared. A shadow among the wrecks. The remains of the Drana High Fleet saw it first, massive structures gliding through the void without thrusters, silent and dark, like moving continents of metal. At first they thought it was debris. Then their scanners caught a faint signal, a human code repeating endlessly across all bands, not a warning, not a threat, just a sequence of numbers. 5 hours, the timer was counting down, nobody understood what it meant, but the fear it created was immediate. Admirals screamed at their crews to retreat. But their engines remained dead, disabled by invisible locks that no one could undo. The galaxy's mightiest ships were now cages floating in space, and from the edge of the system, the Terran fleet began to move again, their formation shifting with mathematical precision, every ship aligning as if part of one vast machine. The Central Command ship, TCS Invictus, shimmered as its hull unfolded like blooming metal, releasing thousands of drones, black and silent, each one spreading outward with perfect synchronization. They didn't attack, they scanned, they mapped, they judged, in the control halls of alien empires across the galaxy. Panic erupted as data from Vashkor streamed in, blurred footage, impossible readings, power surges, matter distortions. No one could make sense of it. And then one message reached the Galactic Council, human fleet establishing control grid over Vashkor sector. The council chamber shook with noise, delegates shouting, claws slamming on tables, translators struggling to keep up. They've seized the battlefield. One screamed, they're occupying. Another cried, no, whispered the oldest delegate, her translucent skin glowing dimly under the chamber lights. They are cleaning. The others turned to her, confused. Cleaning? She nodded. The humans didn't come for conquest, they came to erase our mess. Her words fell heavy in the air, because deep down everyone knew she was right. For centuries the galaxy had ignored Earth, dismissed it as primitive, unimportant. But the humans had watched every war, studied every mistake, and learned, and now they were applying that knowledge not as soldiers, but as judges. Above Vashkor the human drones began weaving energy lines through space, a grid of light that connected to wrecks, ships, and even planets, scanning every particle, identifying radiation, weapons signatures, and life forms. Then, as if deciding, they released clouds of silver dust, nanomachines, swarming through space like mist, dissolving debris, purifying atmosphere, repairing the damage the galaxy had inflicted on itself. Alien captains watched from their disabled ships in disbelief as human machines repaired their oxygen systems, restored power, even transmitted medical signals directly to their comms. They're helping us? One officer whispered. Why? His commander stared blankly. Maybe because they can afford to. It was true. The humans moved with the confidence of those who no longer feared anything. Their ships immune to every known weapon, their presence undeniable, and as the second hour began, the countdown on the fleet's broadcast changed. 4 hours. The panic deepened. The Council attempted to open a direct channel to Earth, but no response came, only the steady hum of the countdown. "Why won't they answer?" demanded the Aelthari High Speaker, his crystalline fingers clicking against the table. "They think they're gods," spat the Drana representative, his teeth bared. "They think they can dictate peace." But behind his rage was fear, the same fear gripping every commander who had ever mocked Earth, because now the mockery was gone. Replaced by silence, obedience, and awe, on board the Invictus, Admiral Elias Rain stood on the observation deck, watching the remains of the greatest war the galaxy had ever known drift in stillness, his eyes tired, his voice low as he spoke to the AI core hovering beside him. "Status report." The Ari's voice was calm, feminine, echoing softly. "Grid control established over 32% of the battlefield. Enemy casualties estimated at 60 million. Survivors stabilized. Conflict probability reduced to 0.2%. Elias nodded slowly, his reflection cold in the glass, and the Council, attempting communication, ignoring transmission lockouts. "Let them wait," he said, his tone flat. "They've talked for 500 years. They can wait 5 hours more." Behind him the command crew worked in silence, humans all, their faces illuminated by holographic screens, their eyes focused, disciplined, not cruel, but resolute. They knew the mission wasn't about vengeance, it was about closure. They had been silent too long, watching species who called themselves advanced destroy everything they touched. Now humanity's patience had run out. Elias turned, his voice firm. "Deploy the Sentinels." "Confirmed," the AI replied, and across the void, massive constructs unfolded from the shadows. Machines the size of moons, shaped like rings of light. They began transmitting signals into hyperspace, stabilizing the distortions caused by centuries of reckless warp travel, repairing what the galaxy had broken. One alien captain whispered, awestruck, "They're rebuilding space itself." And in that moment, every empire realized that they were witnessing something more than technology. They were witnessing control over reality. Meanwhile, the Council sent another plea, this time directly to the human flagship, Admiral Rain. "This is the Council of Yaltur. We request an immediate ceasefire and negotiation." The reply came instantly, "Ceasefire is already in effect. Then why can't we move our fleets?" "Because you're still armed," the voice said calmly. "You will surrender your weapons, all of them." Outrage exploded in the chamber. "That's madness," shouted the Vossen general. "We can't disarm our entire fleets." "Then you can keep floating," the human voice replied simply, and the line went dead. The Council sat in stunned silence, even the loudest among them speechless, because in that moment they understood that the humans weren't asking. They were declaring. Earth had waited for 500 years to speak, and now the galaxy had no choice but to listen. On every battlefield, Terran drones began extracting weapons cores, melting them into harmless metal dust. Soldiers who resisted found their ships surrounded by shimmering energy fields, weapons vanishing from their hands as if reality itself refused to obey them. One Drana general slammed his fists on the console. "Fight them. Anything." But his crew only stared in horror as the ship's weapon systems dissolved. Their power readings flatlined. "They're rewriting our code," one whispered. "It's not possible, it's human," said another softly. "Nothing's impossible for them anymore." Across the fleet, the same thing happened. One by one, ships went dark, disarmed, stripped, and then repaired, left floating intact. The humans didn't destroy what they could fix. They erased the need for destruction entirely. By the end of the second hour, the once chaotic battlefield was now calm. A sea of silent vessels illuminated by Terran light. The humans had taken control not through terror, but through inevitability. Back on Earth, the skies above Sol were clear. The great fleet command towers stood under dawn's light. Hundreds of officers monitoring the operation through live feeds. Reports flowing in from every front. No cheers, no celebration. Just quiet acknowledgement that the mission was proceeding as planned. Humanity didn't crave glory. They had outgrown it. They fought only when they had to, and when they did, they fought to end wars, not to win them. The Chief of Command, Admiral Vega, watched the holographic display of the galaxy turning slowly before her. Glowing dots marking every fleet now under Terran control. She leaned forward, her tone calm but heavy. "Rain's on schedule." "Yes," her aide replied. "Estimated full compliance in 3 hours." "And the council?" Still panicking, she smiled faintly, not with amusement but with sadness. "They should. They've never seen what peace enforced looks like." Her gaze turned toward Earth through the viewing dome, blue and silent, the home that had been mocked, doubted, underestimated, and yet now stood as the last sane power in a galaxy gone mad. 5 hours, she whispered. "That's all it takes to remind them what humanity means." The aide hesitated. "Do you think they'll understand?" Vega's eyes narrowed. "They'll learn, or they'll vanish." Her words carried no hate, just the weight of truth. 5 centuries of restraint had forged humanity into something beyond war, and now the galaxy would learn it too, one system at a time. Above Vashkor, as the countdown reached 3 hours, the Terran ships formed into a vast circle, beams of blue light connecting them like the spokes of a wheel. The energy field expanded outward, stabilizing the entire sector, healing torn space, extinguishing plasma storms, and for the first time in generations, the stars shone clearly again, the wreckage vanished, the silence deepened, and somewhere within that peace, a quiet voice whispered through every frequency, heard by every ship, every commander, every soldier: "Observe. Learn. Remember." It wasn't a threat, it was a commandment, and the galaxy did as it was told to be. By the time the 3rd hour began, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. What had once been chaos had turned into stillness, not peace but the silence before revelation. The wreckage that once floated through the void was now gone, dissolved by Terran nanotech like dust in the wind. Entire sectors that had burned for centuries now shimmered with faint blue light from human repair drones. And for the first time in living memory, there were no weapons firing, no ships chasing, no screams echoing through the void, only the quiet hum of the Terran grid stretching from one star to another. The galaxy had never known silence this pure, and silence, they were learning, could be far more terrifying than war. The countdown from the human fleet continued. 03:00:00. 2 hours 59 minutes and 59 seconds, and the alien admirals watched the numbers drop with dread, each second feeling heavier than the last, as if the ticking itself was rewriting destiny. Across the Council's core worlds, panic and confusion spread like infection. Leaders calling emergency meetings, civilians flooding communication networks, rumors flying faster than light. The humans have seized Vashkor. They control the gates. They've shut down hyperspace. It was all true, and worse, none of it was done with malice. The Terrans weren't conquering. They were cleaning. They were dismantling war itself piece by piece. Admiral Elias Rain stood on the bridge of the TCS Invictus, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the tactical displays unfold, his expression unreadable, his voice calm. "Report," he said. The Ari's voice echoed, smooth and emotionless. "Sector control established. 90% of all enemy fleets disabled, minimal casualties, resistance at 0.1%, Rain nodded, and the Council. Still attempting communication. "Ignore it," he said quietly. "We'll speak when the grid stabilizes." The AI paused, then asked, "Do you believe they'll understand?" Rain exhaled slowly. "They don't have to understand, they just have to stop." His reflection on the glass looked like stone. A man who had seen too many wars and found no glory in them, only exhaustion. The humans had watched the galaxy destroy itself for centuries, waiting for someone else to fix it. But no one ever did. So Earth had finally taken responsibility for a universe too foolish to govern itself. Across the ruined sectors, alien survivors watched Terran drones glide past their ships, the machines silent, graceful, almost reverent, repairing hulls, recharging reactors, stabilizing life support. None of it made sense. The humans had every right to annihilate them. Yet they didn't. They were rebuilding what they had just dismantled. It felt less like victory and more like judgment. One Drana officer whispered in awe. "They kill like gods and heal like priests." His captain growled softly. "No, they heal like those who remember what it feels like to suffer." Far away on the council world of Yaltur, the delegates finally managed to re-establish a partial connection to the Terran fleet. The holographic transmission flickered into view in the middle of the chamber, and there stood Admiral Rain, tall, calm, human, the light from the burning stars behind him making him look half like a savior and half like a ghost. The council speaker rose shakily. "Admiral Rain," he began. "The Galactic Council demands to know your intentions. Are we to consider this an act of war? Rain's voice was quiet but unshakable. War ended the moment we arrived. The chamber erupted with shouts. The Vossen envoy hissed, "You can't decide that." "We didn't," Rain replied. "You did, centuries ago, when you stopped fighting for reason and started fighting for habit. We're just closing the file." The room fell silent, the delegates glaring, but no one could argue. He continued, "Humanity has watched for 500 years while you turned peace into mythology. Now we're giving it back to you." The Drana warlord slammed his clawed fist against the table. "You dare strip us of our sovereignty?" Rain's eyes met his through the projection, cold and sharp. "You stripped yourselves of it the moment you surrendered your children to endless war." His tone was quiet, but it cut deeper than any weapon. Then he said something that froze the entire chamber. "You had your chance to rule this galaxy with honor. Now you will learn to serve it with humility." Before anyone could respond, the transmission cut off, leaving only static and the echo of his words. In orbit, the Terran fleet shifted formation again, smaller ships detaching from the main line, moving toward different sectors like a spreading tide, each one releasing satellites that projected faint waves of light. The Terran peace grid, designed to neutralize any weapon fired in its range. Within minutes the grid enveloped 6 star systems, covering them in invisible protection, and for the first time in millennia, no weapon could function there. When one frightened alien captain tried firing a plasma bolt in panic, the shot disintegrated before leaving the barrel, its energy absorbed harmlessly into the grid. "They've changed the laws of physics," his engineer whispered. "No," the captain said quietly, "they've reminded the laws who wrote them." Meanwhile, on the Invictus, the command center dimmed as a new alert appeared on the main screen. Unauthorized fleet approaching from the outer rim. Rain turned, "Identify." "Unknown, multiple signatures, formation irregular." The AI responded, "They're broadcasting no flags." A sensor officer frowned. "They're suiciding, sir, charging right through the grid." Rain studied the feed, hundreds of ragged ships, half-broken, engines burning red. It was the last remnant of the Aelthari Dominion, desperate, defiant, charging headlong toward the Terran line. "Open a channel," Rain said. "They won't answer," the officer warned. "Then let them hear it anyway," Rain said, his tone darkening. He leaned forward slightly. Speaking not in threat but in command, "Stand down," he said, his voice amplified across every frequency. "You have fought enough, your leaders have abandoned you, your worlds are dying. Don't waste what's left." But they didn't stop. The Dominion ships screamed through space, their weapons charging. "Fire," Rain said quietly, and the Terran fleet obeyed. There was no sound, no flash, no explosion. The Aelthari fleet simply ceased to exist. Their energy signatures erased in a perfect wave. One heartbeat they were there, the next, gone. As if they had never been. The silence afterward felt endless. The AI spoke softly. "Elimination complete." Rain closed his eyes for a moment, whispering to himself, "I warned you." The council watched the feed in horror, the Drana delegate snarling, "They're exterminating us." But the oldest among them shook her head. "No," she said, "they're pruning." Her words sent chills through the chamber, because she was right. The humans weren't destroying indiscriminately. They were precise, surgical, ending only those who refused to stop, sparing everyone else, forcing the galaxy to evolve, one act of mercy at a time. By the 3rd hour's end, the war had not only stopped, it had been erased from existence, every record, every weapon archive, every battle simulation deleted from data caused by Terran code. They didn't just end the war, they erased its memory, leaving only the consequences. "They're rewriting history," one counselor whispered in disbelief. "No," said another, "they're correcting it." The grid expanded further, reaching worlds untouched by battle, stabilizing planetary orbits, reviving dead biospheres, turning graveyards into gardens, and everywhere the same message appeared, burned into holographic skylines across 1,000 systems. Peace enforced by Earth Command. Disarm and rebuild. In the control room of the Invictus, Rain stood at the viewport watching the stars reappear where smoke had once been. His first officer approached quietly. "Sir, grid coverage complete. The war is finished." Rain didn't move, his eyes distant. "No war is ever finished," he said softly. "It just changes shape." His officer hesitated. "Do you think they'll learn?" Rain exhaled slowly. "If they don't, we'll remind them again." The AI flickered to life beside him, its tone unusually human. 5 hours, it said. 5 centuries undone in 5 hours. Rain looked out at the galaxy, his expression unreadable. No, he said quietly, 5 centuries corrected, not undone. And in that moment, even the void felt like it understood. Back on Yaltur, the Council received one final transmission. The same human voice that had started it all, calm and steady. This is Terran Command. Hostilities across all sectors have ceased. The Galactic War is over. Peace is mandatory. Compliance is expected. Then silence, pure and endless. The Council members sat motionless, staring at the blank screen. One whispered, "What happens now?" And the answer came not from words but from the stars themselves, as the light of the Terran grid spread through the galaxy like dawn after an eternal night, washing away centuries of darkness. The war was over, and for the first time since anyone could remember, the universe was quiet. The laughter that had once mocked humanity had died. Forever, replaced by awe, fear, and something new, hope, fragile but real, born from the hand that could destroy and still chose to heal. The 4th hour began under a galaxy bathed in silence, the kind that no one had ever known before, silence that felt alive, heavy, vast. It rolled through systems that had screamed for centuries and left them hollow. The fires of war were gone, and yet the survivors could not sleep, could not breathe without feeling that they were being watched, because the Terran fleet was still there, black and motionless, like shadows carved into the stars, their lights blinking faintly in the darkness, not in warning, but in judgment. Across the surviving fleets, alien commanders gathered in shattered control rooms, whispering like frightened children. No one dared to move, no one dared to fire. Every weapon was cold, every engine locked, even the hum of power felt subdued. Every species that had called itself conqueror was now reduced to silence. The Council sent desperate messages again, but the humans did not answer. They didn't need to. Their silence was the message. Their ships alone were language enough, because they spoke the only truth that mattered. This galaxy no longer belonged to those who played at war. On board the TCS Invictus, Admiral Elias Rain stood unmoving on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the blue grid that stretched across the system. It looked like a spiderweb of light, delicate and infinite, connecting wrecks, planets, satellites, forming patterns too complex for anyone but humans to understand. The AI core floated beside him, whispering softly, "Reconstruction of the Vash core system complete, Admiral. Atmospheric restoration underway. Remaining fleets contained, hostilities 0. Rain nodded slightly, and the Council? Still transmitting pleas for negotiation. The AI replied, "Do you wish to respond?" Rain shook his head. "No, let them wait. 5 centuries of their noise have been enough." His voice was quiet, not cruel, but weary, the weight of generations resting on his shoulders. He looked at the faint light of the stars ahead and whispered, "Do you hear that?" The AI paused, silence. Rain nodded. Yes, the sound of something remembering how to breathe. The bridge crew worked quietly behind him, their faces illuminated by the glow of the holographic controls. They did not cheer, did not celebrate, because they knew this wasn't victory. It was mourning. Humanity had not come to win. They had come to end, and endings were never joyful, they were simply necessary. In orbit of Yaltur, the Galactic Council's emergency session had turned into chaos, leaders shouting, holograms flickering as transmissions overlapped. "They can't hold us like this," screamed the Vossen delegate, his scales trembling. "We must retaliate." "With what?" hissed the Aelthari matriarch. "They control hyperspace itself." "They'll release us eventually," growled the Drana warlord. "They don't want to rule, they want to teach." The others looked at him as if he had lost his mind. "Teach?" The matriarch sneered. "They slaughtered half our fleets and left the other half alive," he replied quietly. "If they wanted conquest, none of us would be here." His voice broke slightly, the pride of his kind fading into something like understanding. "They didn't come to enslave, they came to shame us." The chamber fell silent, the weight of his words heavier than the gravity beneath their feet. Because he was right. The humans had shown them what true power was, not destruction, but restraint. They had rewritten the meaning of fear itself. Back above Vashkor, the countdown hit 2 hours, and every alien ship still alive received the same transmission. A human voice, calm, steady, utterly without emotion, "Prepare for contact." Then, the Terran fleet moved again. For the first time since the battle began. Their massive ships opened hangar bays, releasing waves of small vessels. But these were not war machines. They were transports, carrying drones, medics, engineers, supplies, tens of thousands of them spreading through the wreckage like silver bees. Every ship they reached was scanned, repaired, and stabilized. Alien crews watched in stunned silence as humans boarded their vessels. Not with weapons drawn but with open hands. They spoke little, their faces hidden behind helmets that glowed softly with the symbol of Sol. They treated the wounded, fixed damaged reactors, restored life support, and when alien captains tried to ask why, the humans said only, "Because it's over." That phrase spread faster than any rumor, whispered across every frequency. Because it's over. It became the new anthem of a broken galaxy. On the surface of the ruined planet below, the first Terran landing parties set foot among the ashes, the soil still glowing from bombardment, the air thick with dust and memory. They moved through fields of wreckage with quiet reverence, collecting the fallen, alien and human alike, and burying them together under the same flags. Their leader, Commander Lyra Nash, recorded her report for the fleet. Ground stabilization at 70%. Survivors found from all species, requesting additional med teams. Her voice was calm, but her tone carried sorrow. She knelt beside a dying Aelthari soldier, its crystalline body cracked and dimming. He looked at her weakly, his voice a faint hum. "Why, help me? You killed my brothers." Lyra met his gaze through her visor, her voice soft. "Because someone has to stop the killing." The alien blinked slowly, confusion fading into understanding, his last breath a whisper, "Peace from death." She closed his eyes gently, whispering back, "Peace from pride." The humans worked until their suits were coated in dust and ash, their movements deliberate, their silence sacred. They didn't speak of revenge. They didn't gloat. They rebuilt quietly, humbly, because they knew what it meant to destroy everything and still live. In the fourth hour's final minutes, the Council received another message, this time marked Priority 1. Earth Command. The chamber fell silent, everyone leaning forward as the hologram flickered to life. Admiral Rain appeared again. Standing on the bridge of the Invictus, behind him, stars burned softly in perfect formation. His voice was calm, measured, but carried an unspoken gravity. "This is Terran Command," he began. 500 years of war have ended. Not through negotiation. Not through surrender, but through intervention. His eyes swept across the council members watching from 1,000 light-years away. "You called us cowards for staying silent. You mocked our patience, our restraint. But understand this. Patience is not weakness, it is discipline, and restraint is not fear, it is mercy." He stepped closer to the holofeed, his eyes sharp as knives. "Humanity has seen what war becomes when pride is left unchecked. We will not let it happen again." The council speaker dared to speak. "And if we refuse your peace?" Rain's voice dropped to a whisper that froze blood. "Then you refuse existence." And with that, the transmission ended, leaving only static and a galaxy too afraid to breathe. Outside, the Terran grid expanded one last time, covering the final sectors of the battlefield. As the blue light spread, the countdown hit 0, and every surviving ship, human, alien, and neutral, felt the pulse of something vast moving through space. It wasn't an explosion. It wasn't destruction. It was a wave of energy that reset everything it touched, extinguishing weapons, clearing radiation, purging lingering AI viruses, restoring stability to the very fabric of space itself. When it passed, the stars seemed brighter, the void calmer. It was as if the galaxy had exhaled for the first time in 5 centuries. The humans had done what no empire, no council, no god had achieved. They had reset creation. The Invictus hovered quietly above it all, the Terran flag glinting faintly under starlight. Rain stood alone on the bridge, whispering to himself, 5 hours, his voice barely a breath, and maybe now they'll learn. Behind him the AI flickered softly. "Will they?" Rain smiled faintly, tiredly. "If not, we'll remind them again." Outside, the last of the Terran drones finished their work, leaving the repaired ships and worlds to the silence they had earned. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had parentated it, and every empire, every soldier, every being that lived under those quiet stars knew one truth they would never forget. When humans finally spoke, the universe listened, and when they acted, the universe changed. The 5th hour began like the deep breath before a storm that never came. The galaxy hung still and silent. stars shimmering faintly in the cold darkness, broken fleets suspended like ghosts across the void, every empire, every surviving commander, every frightened citizen waited for what the humans would do next. No one dared to move, no one dared to speak, even the council, once filled with noise and arrogance, sat frozen in their marble chamber, listening to the quiet hum of their dying world. Above them, the vast shape of the Terran flagship TCS Invictus loomed in orbit, a dark giant against the light, watching, waiting, not for victory, but for silence to settle. Inside that ship, Admiral Elias Rain stood alone at the observation window. The blue light of the peace grid glowing faintly across his face, his reflection stared back at him. Haunted, tired, calm. The eyes of a man who had seen too many wars end and knew that every ending had a cost. Behind him, the Ai's soft voice broke the stillness. Admiral. Planetary scans complete, all hostile actions ceased. Compliance at 99%. Rain didn't turn, his voice quiet, and the last 1%. Refusal from the Drana stronghold on Ruktor, the AI replied. They have sealed themselves underground, claiming sovereignty. Rain's lips curved slightly, not in anger but disappointment. Always the Drana, he whispered, always the pride. He turned away from the stars, his boots echoing softly on the metallic floor. Send a message. Content? The AI asked. Just one word, Rain said, remember. Across the galaxy, that one word appeared on every screen, every channel, every beacon, remember. And the moment it did, every being who had ever lived through the war felt it not as a command but as a weight pressing on their hearts. Because that word carried history, it carried guilt. It carried the faces of the dead. Humanity had not only ended the war, they had made sure no one could forget why it had ended. On the council world of Yaltur, the delegates sat in silence, their eyes fixed on the holographic display showing that single word glowing against the stars. The speaker finally spoke, his voice trembling. What do they mean? The old Aelthari matriarch answered softly. They mean that we have been children playing with fire, and the adults have finally taken the matches away. No one argued, because she was right. For all their centuries of power, for all their pride and conquest, the galaxy had been ruled by children, species that built weapons before they built wisdom. Now they were standing before a civilization that had done both, and it humbled them to the core. On Ruktor, the Drana stronghold still defied them. Deep beneath the planet's scorched surface, in massive bunkers carved from obsidian rock, General Kor stood among his warriors, his armor cracked, his eyes bloodshot. He watched the surface through grainy monitors showing the faint blue glow of Terran drones moving across the sky. Let them come. He snarled, his voice trembling with anger. We are Drana, born for war, we will die with honor. His soldiers cheered weakly, the sound hollow. In the dark, but then the monitors flickered, static washed across the screens, and a figure appeared, Admiral Rain's face, calm, illuminated by soft white light. General Kor. Rain's voice echoed through the control room, quiet and composed. Your war is over. Kor's fangs bared, never. We will not bow to a race of humans. Rain didn't flinch. You misunderstand, he said softly. No one is bowing, we're standing you back up. Kor slammed his fist against the console, sparks flying. You think you can tame us? Rain's tone remained calm. Not tame. Teach, Kor roared. We need no teacher. Rain nodded once, then you need extinction. And before Kor could respond, the signal ended. The ground beneath the bunker trembled. A pulse of soft blue light spreading through the rock. Not an explosion, not destruction, just silence. When the dust settled, the bunkers were gone. But the land above was healed. The scars of battle erased. The planet restored to life. The Drana's last fortress wiped clean not with fire, but with mercy that came too late to deserve. On the Invictus, Rain stood in silence as the report came in. Ruktor neutralized, all resistance eliminated, civilian population unharmed. The AI said softly. Rain closed his eyes for a moment, then whispered, so ends the last war, and what now? The AI asked. Now, Rain said, looking back at the stars, we rebuild, and we leave. He walked slowly through the bridge, past his silent crew, each officer lost in thought, the screens around them showing the galaxy bathed in calm blue light, the peace grid spreading like veins of light through darkness, every sector stable, every ship powered down, every weapon cold. Humanity had done what no one else could. They had taken away the right to destroy, and the galaxy would never forgive them for it. But that didn't matter. Forgiveness was never the point, survival was. Rain stopped at the center console, activating the final transmission, a message to every corner of the galaxy. "This is Terran Command," his voice echoed. "Through 1 billion speakers, 500 years ago, you began a war you could not finish. We watched, we waited, we hoped you would stop yourselves, but you didn't, so we did it for you, not as conquerors, but as caretakers of a peace you were too proud to make. You will rebuild your worlds, your families, your dignity, and when you look to the stars, remember the day the silence came, not as a threat, but as a gift." His voice softened, almost human again. "We will not rule you, we will not guide you, but if you ever forget again, we will return." The last words echoed across the stars like prophecy. Peace is not permission, it is protection. In the hours that followed, the Terran fleet began to withdraw, their massive ships turning toward the edges of known space, folding back into the blackness from which they had come. One by one, they vanished into the void, until only the Invictus remained, hovering silently above Yaltur, watching the Council world as dawn broke over its surface for the first time in generations. Rain stood at the viewport, his reflection pale in the soft light. "They'll hate us," the AI said quietly. "Yes." Rain replied, "But they'll live. Do you think it's enough?" "It has to be," he said, his voice steady. "Because if it's not, nothing ever will be." The AI paused. "You sound tired." "Humanity has been tired for centuries," Rain said with a faint smile. "That's why we're the only ones patient enough to save a galaxy from itself." As he turned to leave the bridge, he gave one last command: "Deactivate the grid." "Confirmed," the AI replied, and slowly, the blue light that had wrapped around the galaxy began to fade, not vanishing, but dimming like the glow of a dying candle, leaving behind the stars, bright and clean, untouched, for the first time in living memory. On every world, aliens looked up at their skies and saw the same thing. The Terran light fading into the distance, leaving them alone with their choices, their fears, and their freedom. Children born under that sky would grow up hearing stories of the day the humans came, not as invaders, but as judges and healers. They would learn to speak of Earth not with mockery, but with reverence, because no one who had seen what humans could do ever forgot it. On Yaltur, as the last Terran ship folded into hyperspace, the council chamber lights flickered on again, and the speaker whispered into the silence. "What are they now? Gods?" The old matriarch smiled faintly. "No," she said softly, "they are what we were meant to be." And somewhere, far beyond the rim of known space, the human fleet disappeared into the quiet dark, their mission complete, their silence absolute, their legacy eternal. The war was over, the peace enforced, and the galaxy finally understood the meaning of the 5-hour war. The war humanity didn't start, but the one only humanity could end. The 6th hour began not with fire, but with stillness. The kind of stillness that made entire civilizations tremble. For the first time in 500 years, no fleet moved. No planet burned, and no weapon hummed in anger. The galaxy had gone quiet, eerily quiet, as if the stars themselves were listening to what would happen next. The Terran fleet had vanished beyond the rim of known space, leaving only their mark. 1,000 repaired worlds and a memory that would haunt every empire forever. And yet, the silence they left behind was not peace, not yet. It was the sound of a galaxy trying to understand what it had just witnessed. The alien races who once called themselves rulers were now rebuilding in confusion, afraid to speak too loudly, as if their words might summon the humans back. In the halls of the Galactic Council, the once proud leaders sat surrounded by the ruins of their power. No one argued anymore. The Drana warlord who had once screamed about glory now sat with his claws folded, staring into the table's reflection. The Aelthari matriarch no longer sparkled with arrogance. Her crystal skin dimmed like fading glass, and the speaker, old and weary, whispered the question that no one dared answer. What happens now? Above the planet Yaltur, the skies still shimmered faintly with the residue of Terran energy, arcs of pale light drifting like ghosts across the clouds. The people looked up with awe and fear, whispering prayers in languages older than stars. They had seen gods come and go, but never like this, never a race that could unmake war and then walk away from the throne it had earned. In the cities below, children played among the ruins of old statues. Statues of heroes who now meant nothing. Mothers told them stories of the humans, stories that would become myths. They came from the blue world, they said, and in 5 hours, they ended 5 centuries. Merchants whispered of Terran drones that still floated silently above abandoned colonies, maintaining power grids, purifying water, and feeding the starving, not as conquerors, but as caretakers, yet no one saw a single human anymore. It was as if they had returned to the shadows from which they came, waiting, watching, unseen, and every empire knew that if they made the same mistake again, the humans would return, and this time, they might not rebuild what they destroyed. On Earth, the sky was calm, the ocean still, cities glittered beneath the light of dawn, and in orbit above the planet, the Terran command spire hung silently like a guardian star. Inside, Admiral Elias Rain stood before a vast holographic display of the galaxy. The peace grid's faint blue lines now fading one by one as systems stabilized. His reflection flickered across the glass, a man carved from discipline and fatigue. The AI voice spoke behind him. Operation Silence is complete, Admiral. All sectors compliant, all fleets disarmed. No resistance detected. Rain's voice was quiet, and reconstruction. Proceeding independently, the AI replied, alien species are rebuilding. They have begun forming new alliances. Defensive, not offensive. Rain nodded slowly, his hand brushing the glass where a small blue dot blinked faintly. Earth's symbol. The one world that had waited longer than any other to act. 5 hours. He murmured, that's all it took. 5 centuries of lessons, the AI added, and 1 moment of courage. He smiled faintly, not courage. He said, necessity. He turned away. Walking down the long metal corridor, his boots echoing softly, humanity never wanted to rule, but we couldn't let the galaxy keep killing itself. He stopped at a large viewport overlooking Earth, its oceans swirling like liquid sapphire. We've seen our own apocalypse, he whispered, that's why we stopped theirs. On Yalta, the Council received a final, encrypted transmission from Earth. It was brief, only a few sentences, and when the speaker read it aloud, his voice shook. The war is over, not because you surrendered, but because we refused to let you continue. Remember this. Peace is not given, it is maintained, and we are always listening. There was no signature, no demand, just the seal of Sol. 3 concentric circles glowing in white light, and then the message vanished, leaving the chamber. Filled with a cold silence that no one dared break, one of the younger delegates, her voice trembling, asked, will they come back? The matriarch answered softly, only if we make them. Outside the chamber, repair drones hummed through the broken cities, rebuilding the bridges, the towers, the walls, but they were not council drones. They were Terran, programmed to complete their work and then disintegrate into dust. They had no masters, no greed, no voice, only purpose. And when they were gone, they left nothing behind but light. Faint trails glowing like fireflies fading into the wind. Across the galaxy, small moments of peace began to appear like fragile sparks, on Vash Kor, where the final battle had taken place. The air was breathable again. Oceans began to form where craters once lay, alien survivors, once enemies, now worked side by side planting the first seeds in centuries. Their tools forged from melted weapons. Their sweat the first honest labor the planet had known. A Drana soldier looked at a Vossen engineer and muttered, strange, isn't it? The Vossen smiled. Faintly, what is? Working beside the one I tried to kill. The humans made it possible, the Vossen said softly. They took away our excuses. Nearby, a group of children, different species, different colors, different voices, played under the shadow of a monument built from shipwrecks, engraved with words that none of them understood yet. Peace is not weakness. It is mastery. And somewhere, beyond the edge of the system, a single Terran probe drifted silently, its sensors watching, recording, ensuring that the peace it bought with silence would not be broken. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Rain stood before the High Council of Humanity for his final report. The room was vast, filled with light. No gold, no marble, just steel and glass, the way humans liked it. Practical, humble, strong. The Supreme Chairwoman looked at him with calm eyes. It's done then? She asked. Yes, he replied. The galaxy's at peace. And do they fear us? She asked. Rain hesitated. Yes, good. She said softly, fear keeps the foolish awake. And what of us? Rain asked, her expression softened. We rest, Admiral, until the stars forget what we had to do. The room fell quiet, and for the first time in years, Rain allowed himself to breathe, truly breathe. The war was over, not just for the galaxy, but for humanity too. They had carried the weight of restraint for centuries. Now they could finally lay it down, at least for a while. Outside, the sunlight struck the oceans, glittering like shards of peace, and the sky was clean again. Yet somewhere, deep within the archives of Sol Command, hidden beneath layers of encrypted data, a single file remained locked, labeled simply Protocol Dawnfire. The same weapon that had once burned half the galaxy's fleets in seconds. The AI that guarded it whispered softly into the void, "Shall I erase it, Admiral?" Rain stood in the dark corridor, his eyes on the screen. "No," he said quietly. "Keep it. For what purpose?" "For memory," he said. "Peace isn't real unless you remember what you had to destroy to make it." The AI paused, its voice fading, acknowledged, and the chamber lights dimmed again, the hum of the archive fading into silence, leaving only the heartbeat of Earth echoing through the halls of the most powerful, yet most merciful species the universe had ever known. Humanity had left the battlefield, but their shadows stretched across time itself, a warning written in the language of restraint and strength. And as the stars turned slowly in the dark, every world, every species, every soul in the galaxy carried the same thought. That if war ever returned, the humans would too, and 5 hours would be all it took for the silence to come again. Centuries later, the galaxy still whispered about the 5-hour war, but time had turned it into legend, and legends, like scars, always fade until something makes them bleed again. For generations no one had dared to fight. The memory of the Terrans lingered too vividly, their silence felt heavier than any threat. Children grew up under skies free of smoke. Farmers tilled soil instead of ash, and for the first time since history began, entire worlds lived without armies. The stars seemed gentler, almost merciful. Yet peace has a way of softening pride, and pride, once forgotten, always finds a way back. It began quietly, on the rim worlds, far from the old council's reach. Colonies grew ambitious. Merchants whispered of lost weapons hidden. In the ruins of old battlefields, researchers started decoding Terran fragments left behind, tiny pieces of the impossible, the kind of power no one should hold. They told themselves it was for defense, for protection, but the tone of their voices betrayed the hunger beneath, the hunger for control. In hidden laboratories they worked by dim light, studying the technology the humans had abandoned, and slowly, dangerously, they began to forget the cost of peace, their pride returning like a slow infection, one that no cure could hold forever. On Yalta, now rebuilt and shining with towers of glass, the new Galactic Council gathered in celebration of the 300th anniversary of the Great Silence. Their leaders draped in robes of silver, their speeches full of pride disguised as gratitude. They spoke of progress, of unity, of how far they had come since the humans taught them peace. But none of them dared to mention how much of that peace was built on fear. At the heart of the chamber stood a monument, an ancient Terran transmission core, no larger than a child's heart, encased in crystal, still glowing faintly with blue light. The speaker approached it, his voice ringing across the hall. "We honor those who ended our suffering," he said, "but we must never let any species hold such power again." Applause filled the room, loud, hollow, practiced, and somewhere deep beneath that same chamber, hidden far below the foundations, a different light stirred, a Terran drone. One of the original Sentinels. Reawakening. For the first time in centuries, its sensors flickered to life, scanning the Council's network, reading their archives, listening to their words, and then, after a long pause, it transmitted a single message into the void: observation, arrogance restored. The signal vanished into subspace, unnoticed by the Council above, but it didn't vanish completely. It traveled, carried through the dark between stars, back toward the forgotten edge of space where no one dared look anymore, back toward Sol. Far beyond the rim, deep in the cold black where light itself seemed afraid to shine, the human observation station Erebus 9 stirred, its systems coming online for the first time in decades. Within its silent halls, a lone figure stood watching the transmission unfold across the main screen, her hair streaked with silver, her face illuminated by the pale light of the stars. Commander Lyra Nash, once the ground officer on Vashkor, now the keeper of the watch, studied the data with narrowed eyes. "It's starting again," she whispered. The AI voice filled the chamber, low and steady. "Do you wish to alert command?" Lyra hesitated, her gaze shifting toward the distant glow of Earth far across the void, a single blue dot surrounded by endless darkness. "Not yet," she said softly. Let's see if they've learned anything in 300 years. She walked along the transparent floor, the stars beneath her feet glowing faintly. And if they haven't? The AI asked. Then, she said, her voice quiet, almost mournful, the silence will come again. Back in the heart of the galaxy, the Council's ambition grew bolder. Scientists had begun reconstructing fragments of Terran code. Unable to understand it fully but certain it could be weaponized, they called it defensive innovation. But their eyes gleamed like the old warlords of legend. They wanted power again, wanted control again. They wanted to forget what it had felt like to kneel, and as their secret experiments continued, strange phenomena began appearing at the edges of known space. Ships vanishing without trace, communication blackouts, distortions that bent light itself, the same signs that had once preceded the arrival of the Terran fleet. Panic whispered through the lower systems, old veterans muttered in fear, they're coming back. But the younger generation laughed. The humans are gone, ghosts don't return. The laughter didn't last long, because soon after, the sky over Yalta darkened at noon, sensors went blind, and a low hum filled the air, deep, resonant. Familiar, the same sound that had ended the war 5 centuries ago. Across the galaxy, every world went silent, every ship powered down, and above the Council world, the void split open in a river of white light. The TCS Invictus, now myth reborn, emerged from hyperspace like a waking god, its hull darker than night, its engines glowing with quiet fury, no words, no warning, just presence. The kind of presence that made even gravity bow. Alarms screamed across the Council chambers, leaders shouting, terrified, it can't be real. They left, but the truth unfolded before their eyes. The ship that had once saved the galaxy had returned, unchanged, timeless, patient. Admiral Elias Rain was long gone, but his successors carried his voice. The same calm, unshakable tone echoed across every communication channel. This is Terran Command, it said. We warned you once. Peace is not a suggestion. The entire galaxy froze, all systems locked, every weapon, every reactor, every piece of stolen Terran code wiped clean in an instant. You have broken the covenant, the voice continued. And now you will remember again. The skies erupted in light, but it was not destruction, it was correction. Fleets de-armed, factories shut down. The stars themselves dimmed for a moment as the peace grid reactivated, spreading across systems that had forgotten its touch. And when the light faded, the universe was still again, untouched, unharmed, but quiet, the kind of quiet that comes after a parent scolds a child. In the silence that followed, the new speaker of the Council fell to his knees, tears running down his scaled face. We didn't mean to, he cried. We just wanted progress. The Terran voice replied, softer now, almost gentle. Progress without memory is just another word for arrogance. The message paused, then ended with the same final words spoken 5 centuries before. This war is over. And just like that, the Terran fleet vanished again, leaving no trace but peace and shame behind them. No wrecks, no scars, no blood. Only stillness. Years passed after the second silence, and though no one saw the humans again, their legend grew beyond anything written in history. Temples were built in their name, songs written about their patience and mercy. Philosophers called them the hands of balance. Others whispered that they weren't truly human anymore, but something greater, guardians born from regret, keepers of a promise the galaxy never understood. And somewhere far from the chaos of alien empires, deep within the quiet blue, cradle called Earth, a small child looked up at the stars one night and asked her father, will they ever fight again, Papa? The man smiled softly, his eyes reflecting the light of the moon. Maybe, he said. But if they do, the stars will remember. He pointed upward, and so will we, for even in peace, humanity kept its ships ready, its fleets silent but alive, not because they wanted war, but because they understood the truth that no one else ever could. That peace without vigilance is only the pause between storms, and as long as the galaxy turned, the guardians of soul would remain, unseen, waiting, watching, ready to remind the universe once more that when humanity enters the war ends.